Hey, what's going on, East Hampton? I'm Matt Lownes here live here at LTV, and this is Ask The Supervisor. Today is Monday, November 15th, and I'm live here with Town Supervisor Peter Van Scoyoc. Peter, hello, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. How are you?
Good. It was we had a little interesting storm on Saturday, whatever you want to call it. Tornado, depends where you are, but it lasted 5 minutes in some areas, 20 minutes in others.
I'm just on the western edge of town, Northwest Woods, and when that storm came through, we had some very unusual clouds just before it struck, and then some lightning, and then a little bit of rain, and then some straight line winds that were pretty amazing. I watched an oak tree out in the front yard that was fully leaved, and when that gust of wind hit, it bent over, and all the leaves left all at once like a flock of birds. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I feel bad for all the people who are coming out this upcoming weekend to check out the leaves because they're gone. Uh, no, I noticed the same thing over by my house in Amagansett. Let's move on to what's going on in East Hampton. Right now, very interesting. I don't know what the town's direct involvement is, but East Hampton and Long Island and really the whole country is getting ready to vaccinate the 5 to 11-year-old aged kids. Does the town have any specific part in that as far as getting the vaccines to the kids?
We do, Matt. We worked with Dr. Gail Schoenfeld, pediatrician here locally, right next door actually to Town Hall. And she received doses and held a clinic, and I think she vaccinated over 300 of her patients. We allowed her to use as overflow parking the Panago Ball Fields parking lot. And from what I understand, that went very well, went very smoothly. The town has also been offering third doses, well, actually first, second, or third, depending on what you need. Here at Town Hall, we did a clinic just recently on Monday. We'll have another one coming up shortly. Check the town website and social media sites for more information about that. We weren't sure if we'd get pediatric doses, so at this point we weren't advertising them, but we should get confirmation the next day or so. So that may also be another option for you if you have a 5 to 12-year-old who's not yet vaccinated, or anyone else over 5 who's not yet vaccinated or needs a third dose. So this is an important part of getting past the pandemic. I think we're continuing to make progress, and with everybody getting vaccinated, so that really will help get us through.
Now I know there's been a lot of what's the right word? Controversy over the vaccine. Is there anything? Basically, what I'm saying is there anything that parents should be afraid when vaccinating their kids, or has everything that the state and the scientists have said totally come through?
Everything that I've read, Matt, points to the fact that the vaccines are very safe and very effective, and we should all be getting them. And there really shouldn't be any controversy about it, given the science. I know some people are still skeptical. I mean, I guess that's human nature to be skeptical, but you know, in the context of things, I mean, you get your children vaccinated for any number of other childhood diseases that could make them seriously ill, and the side effects are the same as most other vaccinations, where the kid's probably going to cry if they're 5 years old. You know, they get a lollipop and you try and comfort them, but that's probably going to be the worst result, and that's certainly much better than possible, you know, severe illness from getting COVID.
Still a great job.
And what the long-term health impacts might be from getting COVID.
Still, it's a great job out of town to work with Dr. Gail Schoenfeld over there right next to you guys, and to get those 300 or so people, kids, vaccinated. So yeah, props to you guys. Moving forward, we talked about it many times here on this show, but specifically a few weekends ago, there was 14 individuals that were given violations via trespassing violations for the protests at Truck Beach on Napeague. Like I said, that was a few weekends ago. As far as last week, it has now been moved from the Town Justice Court to the Suffolk County Supreme Court due to arguments from the Oceanfront Properties lawyers. Does the town have an official response to this as far as the violations for simple trespassing getting moved from town court to the Suffolk County Supreme Court?
Well, I mean, we went and argued in front of the judge, and if we have to go to Supreme Court, that's where we'll go. We're also commencing an action to basically bring to a head the question about the reservations and the rights of East Hamptoners to fish along that stretch. As you know, the upland private property owners are claiming title to that stretch of beach through the Benson deeds, but the Benson deeds also had reservations where they reserve certain rights for the people of East Hampton to continue to fish along that stretch. So, that's our position, and we're going to continue to fight for our citizens' access rights along the beach there.
Timetable-wise, is there an official next date for the next step in the courts, or is there anything that you could let the public know about moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm not aware of what the court calendar is in the case. I do know these things tend to get drawn out, and I don't expect a resolution of it, before Thanksgiving, certainly, but, we'll keep the public apprised as things do develop.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that, as we have the last few weeks here on this show. Another topic that we keep an eye on is the airport, the very talked about airport out here. Last week in the East Hampton Star, the finances were explained a little bit. I'll just read a quick quote. But as 70% of the surveyed passengers indicated that they would continue to visit their destinations via other forms of transportation, much of the spending would not, in fact, disappear. The consultants hired by the town estimated 10 to 15 million in direct spending. A modified airport that was closed to commercial traffic would support 125 to 210 jobs, according to the consultants. So my question to you is, based on the consultants' information, there seems to be rather good arguments on both sides. Can you explain the thinking behind allowing commercial traffic or not from the town's perspective?
Well, I think what we've heard from our constituents is that the airport has really exceeded the acceptable footprint for an airport here locally, and much of that is due to commercial traffic. So, I think it's incumbent upon us, if the airport's to stay open, that we really address either the volume and frequency, especially of commercial traffic, and to all traffic. We look at, the environmental impacts of that and the noise related to it, and that we try to fine-tune restrictions to really address in a significant way what's most unacceptable in the public's mind about the operation of the airport.
Now, I guess a lot of people would say if you get rid of the commercial traffic, the roads will be a little bit more congested. Is there any truth to that, or? There just simply isn't the kind of volume in air traffic, the number of people arriving by air, that you're going to see a massive influx of automobiles if you cut commercial traffic. We do think that we will continue to be a very popular area, even with some restrictions at the airport. And as you mentioned, the study showed that a significant number of people will continue to come here even if they can't come by air. So I don't think that's really going to be a major impact, flooding our roadways. Do you have is there any time frame in when you're expecting the town to make an announcement of the airport, whether it be a temporary closure or any announcements at all?
Yeah, I mean, we hope to have a plan in place. We have met recently with the FAA, which was an encouraging, promising meeting. I can't go into all the details of that, but we do believe that trying to close the airport on a temporary basis and then reopening as a publicly owned private use airport with full control over, every aspect of the airport is I think, the best pathway to addressing the community's concerns and still having an open and functioning airport. So this would take place ideally in the winter months where the airport is used the least, so it'd be least disruptive, and reopen with a whole suite of restrictions that will address, we think, the problems that people are most concerned with.
I mean, it sounds like a good plan to me. You're not going to hear any arguments from me. I think, the town's doing exactly what it should. Moving forward, the town budget was only $168,454 increase. That may sound like a lot, but relatively speaking, it's really not. And that's due to the regrading of 115 town employees with, and I want to make sure I'm saying this word right, with commensurate wage increases averaging up to 5%.
Yeah, so the 168,000 you're referring to is the change in salary expenditures since the first tentative budget was released. When I released that tentative budget, it was under the 2% tax cap, but I encouraged my fellow board members to support a very broad regrading of nearly half of all the town staff so that we could retain and be competitive with adjacent municipalities and with other businesses to fairly compensate our town employees given the additional costs of living here that we've seen spiking during the pandemic. And, I felt this was a very important move, and, we're not to the finish line yet. I expect that we will have to continue this effort over the next several years in order to ensure that we have a fully staffed and operational government.
Yeah. And additionally, the budget includes funding for additional police officers and ordinance inspector, as well as for the promotion of ordinance enforcement officers. Can you explain that a little bit for someone at home who may not understand what an ordinance enforcement officer is?
Absolutely. So that's referring to code enforcement. The town has certain codes, zoning codes, codes against littering, etc., and land use codes. And so code enforcement deals primarily with those, whereas the police are more involved with vehicular traffic and criminal activity and public safety. So that's the way that breaks out. And so we've added an additional position, and again, given promotions within the department to a number of staff, again, as part of an effort to acknowledge the good work of our employees and to stay competitive within the region.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is the ordinance enforcement officer in charge of making sure that, let's just say, different bars and restaurants in the area, whether it be the Stephen Talkhouse or the Memory Motel in the summer, is at capacity or under capacity and not over capacity?
Yes, so code enforcement is involved with that, but in terms of occupancy, generally that's the fire marshal's office that does inspections for occupancy. But for instance, noise complaints, if somebody has a loud party and they're playing music at 2 a.m., code enforcement will go out there if they're on duty, or in some cases the police do actually take those calls depending on time of day.
Okay, cool, awesome. Next, let's move on to some of the agenda items for tomorrow's meeting, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. And then you can, as always, you can call in using the number above and ask Peter whatever question you have for Peter. The CPF water quality project recommendations, that's one of the top items on tomorrow's meeting agenda per the town's website.
Yeah, that's right. So we have, a number of different projects that are proposed to improve local water quality. And, they include stormwater runoff. We have a pump out tank replacement at both Star Island And down at Gann Road, we encourage boaters to pump their boat waste at these locations. The pumping has increased as boating's increased in our harbors, and we're doing an upgrade to those tanks. They're going to be 5,000 gallon tanks. I think they're currently 3,000. They're getting to be 15 plus years old, and it's time to upgrade them. We'll also have a stormwater abatement design discussed at Lownes Point down at the road end there, and some work on the parking area. There's some areas where there's runoff onto the beach, and so there's some conceptual plans to remediate that. So, that's those are two projects there. The third would be Septic Incentive Program modifications. There's some proposals to modify the language in that as well. So we'll be discussing all of those items.
Now, I have a question about the Lownes Point Road stormwater improvement. Is that going to improve an already existing stormwater drain, or is there no drain there and there needs to be
So there's no drain.
Oh, sorry.
And oftentimes you have just like the surface water directly runs off across the roadway or parking area into, the bay and the harbor. So what we're looking to do is to have a buffering of that water to capture it and recharge it into the ground, where it gets filtered out and doesn't run directly into, the surface waters.
That was a follow-up question for my father, as he keeps his boat at Lownes Point. So I am very interested in that answer, as is he. You mentioned the third thing. I'm sorry, it's escaping my mind. But what was the third water?
Septic. So we have a septic incentive program where we encourage people to upgrade their septic systems.
Okay.
So we're talking about changing some of the language to make the program eligibility requirements based on approved process guide rather than code modifications. So that would be a little more flexible and user friendly.
Seems good to me. The EAF is going to review the affordable housing overlay. I'm not sure I even understand what that means. Do you think you could explain that?
Sure, I'll give that a shot. So the EAF is an environmental assessment form, and it's a required part of doing a SECRA review, which is a State Environmental Quality Review Act. And so for any project, we have to assess what the environmental impacts might be of that project. So we will be going through the EAF environmental assessment forms for the affordable housing overlay district that we're proposing in Route 114, where the town has in the last several years acquired properties to be developed as affordable housing.
Now it makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that to not only me, but anyone else at home listening and watching. And then finally, last thing that I saw of notice is Buckskill Meadow is hiring a contractor for multi-use trail updated proposals. I'm assuming that's some sort of updated trail proposals.
So we have a 25-acre preserve that we acquired, and it's called the Buckskill or Trunzo Preserve, given the former owner's name. And there are recreational paths being put on that property, which are going to be quite nice, great location. It's a fairly flat piece of property, beautiful property, and I believe it's a 1 mile trail that will be available to people who want to walk or bike, or if you have a wheelchair, or if you're learning how to ride a bike, it can be a great place to tour that area. And so we're excited about that. So that's moving forward. The base material's already been put down, and the the layout is roughed out, and so this will be completing that.
Sounds cool. I want to go check that out, actually. I know there's a lot of cool little hiking places out here, and that sounds like a cool one. So, Peter, that's really all I have on my list. Is there anything you want to bring to the show today?
So we'll be discussing a couple of other topics at tomorrow's work session. One of them will be the proposed administrative bureau creation, where we're proposing to create an administrative adjudication bureau. It's sort of another branch of the judicial system to deal with town code violations primarily. When the bail reform law was passed in New York recently, it required a lot of extra steps and disclosures and verifications and paperwork for all sorts of summonses being written. And it trickled down all the way to code violations, which meant that, we're spending an extraordinary amount of time processing violations. And I'll give you just an example of, on the criminal side, the trespass down on the beach, where 14 people were written up for trespass. It took 12 hours to do the paperwork on those 14 citations. So you can imagine every single code violation from, littering to excessive music or whatever, the amount of paperwork and disclosure required really bogged the system down. And there's an exemption if you have an administrative bureau that would become more like you're cited with the fine. You can challenge the fine if you want, or you can just pay it and be done. And it's a short form type of summons. And we think that will make the whole system a lot more efficient, that we'll get better response on paying of fines and less court time.
That sounds like an awesome plan. I'm like in such awe of it. And my follow-up question is, this is the young person in me. Is there going to be a way to do this online?
That's a really good question. And I think it's quite likely that there will be a way to pay a fine online once this is in place. We are, constantly trying to move forward into the 21st century across all the different departments. We've been digitizing records and going to digital records wherever we can, with the ultimate goal of being able to make government more user-friendly, so that people could get land use information online. So permitting online, clerk's office moving to more of an online model. We hope to be implementing improvements in the clerk's office this coming year, including adding credit card payments. So there's still a lot to be done.
No, I mean, hey, you're making strides. I think that plan is a really good idea. I can't believe it took 12 hours to write those 14 violations. That's crazy. I actually can't believe that. Can you maybe explain why it took 12 hours?
Just the whole process, documenting every single step, each individual. So, I mean, you figure it takes just under an hour to process each one of those 14 individuals. That adds up, and that means that there's less time that law enforcement is out doing the job, really.
Yeah, nobody wants law enforcement wasting their time on paperwork when there's an actual issue somewhere, regardless of where you live. That's just a fact. Wow, no, I really do think that's an awesome plan, and I think that's only going to help, especially the courts. People don't have to, physically argue if they can just pay. I like that idea a lot. Peter, anything else other than that awesome plan?
We will have a discussion on some minor changes to the ethics code in East Hampton. We're just making some of the existing code a little clearer. We'll also be, putting a prohibition on certain activities by former members of town government, once they leave public office, there's some restrictions for a period of time as to representing entities which they were involved with on the government side. And that would be a 2-year period in which that activity can't take place. We think that's an important step to further our ethics code. It's something that the Board of Ethics had recommended, and so we did take that up, I believe, back in March, and we'll be putting that up for a public hearing shortly. So we'll have one more work session on the draft recommendations and proposed legislation tomorrow, and then likely schedule it for a public hearing in the very near future after that.
Sounds plenty fair. My only follow-up question to that is, was that brought up directly by the ethics board, or was that brought up from the public originally?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I know we received it from the ethics board, and again, that originally, I think it was over a year ago. We did have a session with the draft legislation back in March, and we're getting back to it now and hope to finalize it here before the end of the year.
Interesting stuff. Well, if any of that sounds interesting to you, or you're passionate about something like that, please watch Peter's meeting tomorrow, 11 a.m. on channel 22 here on LTV. Peter, any last comments or thoughts?
Well, I just want to say that we will be having testing returning here at Town Hall. There was a short hiatus. The testing was being done at the CDCH building on 110 Stephen Ann's Path. That testing is moving back here at the Town Hall campus Wednesday. That's day after tomorrow, and they'll be operating 5 days a week, Monday through Thursday, and then on Saturday here at Town Hall, with Fridays in Montauk. So just want to make the public aware of that.
And get your flu shot.
Get your flu shot. I got my flu shot. I got my 3rd dose. Hopefully I'm good to go.
How many more shots you got left in you?
I
gotta get my
another
booster
shot.
soon.
Yeah.
It's almost time for my booster.
So once it's been at least 6 months from your last previous vaccination dose, you're eligible for an additional booster.
And like we said at the top of the show, age 5 to 11 or 5 to 12 can now get vaccinated in anywhere. State of New York, USA, so get your kid vaccinated if you can. And thank you very much for watching and listening. We'll be back next Monday. I'm Matt Lownes here with Peter Van Scoyoc. Peter, thank you so much.
Matt, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Stay safe and be well, everyone.
Yeah, have a good week, everyone.